Welcome. Today's story takes us to the 1930s during the Japanese occupation of Korea, depicting the repressed anger and desperate resistance of women forced to the very bottom of society. Let's dive into Lee Hyo-seok's The Shattered Red Lantern to see how these exploited women stood up for their rights. The Shattered Red Lantern. Hello there. I have something to tell you. Please come here. Come in and play for a while before you go. Don't just tease, come on over. Oh, come on, come inside. Hello there, hello there, hello there. When the evening lights began to ripen warmly in the red lanterns along the darkening streets, this sound, crying and shouting like a swarm of frogs awaking from hibernation, drying up their blood and squeezing their throats, could no longer be heard at this brothel, nor were the flowers that beckoned butterflies blooming profusely in front of the pavilion. In this glamorous market that usually shouted and seethed like an early morning bazaar with the buying and selling and haggling of merchandise regardless of the night, only the front of this pavilion was deeply desolate. The doors were bleakly closed, and the red lantern hanging above them merely cast a faint light on the front of the doors. When this place, which had never withered across all 4 seasons, withered so bleakly, it was certain that something extraordinary had occurred. When they were first sold into this hell on contracts of a few hundred or a few thousand won, they were so terrified and scared by the absurd situation that the world was dark with tears and weeping for several weeks. When night fell and they took in a customer and went into their rooms, it was like being dragged to a slaughterhouse. If they were too scared and cried and struggled, some customers would pity them and just leave, while others would shout, call the owner, and act violently. Then the owner would rush in and beat them mercilessly. After being battered by tears, fear, and beatings, their bodies grew increasingly exhausted, and eventually they could no longer sustain their physical strength. Yet, when they fell ill and lay in bed, they were not even given a single dose of medicine, let alone a spoonful of thin gruel. Selling their bodies, getting beaten, being abused, they had been living a life worse than that of dogs or pigs. It had been a long time since they, who had not been treated as human beings, harbored grievances and bided their time. The more they were abused, the more their resentment knotted and their anger grew. Even though their resentment and anger had not been unified toward a single common goal, all 8 of them harbored the exact same feelings of unjustness and deep sorrow. It was a particularly exhausting day. Around noon, after finishing breakfast and gathering in the large room downstairs with sluggish bodies, a sigh leaked out from whose mouth no one knew. Why do we suffer like this? In the midst of everyone remaining silent, as if lacking even the energy to speak, a slightly younger prostitute named Bong-seon stepped forward and spoke. Isn't it because both your fate and mine are wretched? Of course, who wouldn't want to serve a decent husband like others, have sons and daughters, and live well? But what can we do when we were born with wretched fates? Bu-young, an older prostitute who had been sitting silently for a long while deep in thought, protested as if she could not agree with this remark. What does fate have to do with it? We are fully equipped with the same features as anyone else. In what way are we inferior to others that we had to abandon our parents, lose our siblings, leave our hometowns, and end up doing this? Why would so many people all just be born with such wretched fates? Isn't that all because of fate? Even so, you say it's fate. No matter how much I think about it, I feel like there is something else outside of fate that made us like this. Chae-bong, who had been newly sold from a rural area in Gyeongsang province and was exhausted from nightly weeping and beatings, jumped forward and cried out in a hoarse voice. In all my life, I've never seen a business of selling fucking cans like this. What a leper-like world. Easily, moved to tears, she was already touched by the words that came out of her own mouth, and tears welled up in her eyes. Bu-young followed her. Yes, just like Chae-bong said, it's a leper-like world. What made us like this is not our wretched fate, but this leper-like world. The world made us unfortunate? Bong-seon seemed doubtful. Isn't it so? Think about it. When we first crossed over here, who was the bastard who sold us off under a contract or whatever? And who is the bastard squeezing every penny of the money we earn now? Have we ever received a single penny, even as we dry our blood and sell our flesh every night? Well, that's true. Even if one person earns at least 6 won a night, our 8 people already earn nearly 51. Whose pocket does all that 51 go into? Without even getting 5 wons worth of food a day, the 8 of us struggle and earn money only to benefit complete strangers. After a long while, Bongshan sighed. Now that I think about it, aren't we idiots? Of course we are. We are not human beings. We are objects. We are objects that are sold here and there by the bastards' tricks, getting our blood squeezed to fatten them up. Is that really so? Think about it. Ponder over it carefully and see if it's not true. Then we are just blatant fools. We are fools, complete fools. It's not that our fate is wretched or our features are inferior to others, but we who do these foolish things are the stupid ones. Think about whether we've ever been treated like human beings. Haven't we been looked down upon as lower than dogs or pigs? Buyong's voice trembled somewhat here. Have you eaten what you wanted to eat? Have you played when you wanted to play? When you were sick, did you get a spoonful of gruel or a sip of medicine? When we first come in, the world is dark with beatings and tears, and even when the term is up, they don't let us go. Before she knew it, tears circled in her eyes. But with a trembling voice, she continued, Take Myung-ja over there. Hasn't she already earned back all the money contracted when she came? And hasn't it been 2 months since her term expired? But look, if the owner is letting her go. He holds on to her tightly and won't let go, trying to squeeze out one more drop and extort one more penny. Hearing this, tears welled up in Myung-ja's eyes. Unable to hold them back any longer, her sobs finally burst out. Chaebong cried along with her. The young Bongsun, overcome with sorrow, thrashed about and even sobbed heavily. Thus, reflecting on their respective sorrowful situations, they eventually all burst into tears in unison. Only Buyong bit her lip firmly, suppressed her crying, and continued speaking. We are not human beings. Can you endure this contempt that makes us worse than dogs or pigs any longer? Can you just swallow it and keep enduring it? If we can't endure it, what should we do? Chaebong lamented with a tearful voice. Buyong did not answer for a long while. Then finally she looked around the group. Don't cry. What good is crying? Then, as if wringing it quietly from her heart, she spat out one clear word after another. Let's not cry. Let's try something. Try what? Let all 8 of us team up and take on the owner. Take him on? How? The tearful faces all turned toward Buyong in unison. Don't we have many grievances? Let's demand that the owner listen to those grievances. Will the owner listen to our grievances? To Chaebong, it seemed completely absurd. That's why I'm saying, if we demand it and he doesn't listen, we do as we please. Do as we please? The tear-soaked eyes looked at Buyong again in confusion. If we all team up and he doesn't listen to us, we just stop. If we don't earn money for him, that's the end of it. Would he let us do that? If we all resolve together and refuse to listen even if we die, what can they possibly do? That's right. Exactly. They gradually began to understand. Finally, having well digested Buyong's explanation and plan, they raised both hands, overflowing with joy, jumping and shouting. Good! Good! Buyong, you wench, where did you learn such an idea? I heard it from my older brother who used to work in a factory. At that time in the factory, they did that, and their wages went up, their working hours decreased, and they even kicked out the abusive supervisor. You wench, you're brilliant. Let's do it too. Let's do it. Let's do it. Numerous frail fists clenched firmly, and the room that had been clouded with tears now cleared up brightly with plans and light. Thus, they finally tied a beautiful resolve together and decided to carry out the deed. The immense resentment and anger against the abuse they had suffered in this world until now was finally expressed in a concrete form, confronting the owner of this house. Being their first time, they entrusted the negotiations to Buyong. Buyong, having heard things from her brother before, avoided negotiating verbally with the owner, and following the example of her brother's peers, decided to write something like a list of demands. From the numerous items coming out of the mouths of the 8 people, Buyong, who was not fluent but could read and write roughly, selected the following main items. Placing a piece of paper on the bumpy tatami mat, She painstakingly wrote them down with a pencil. 1. Release Myongja, whose term has expired as soon as possible, not even a day late. 2. Business hours shall be from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., i.e., do not accept any more customers after 2 a.m. 3. Allow free outings during the day. 4. Give 1 day off per month. 5. Do not beat newcomers. 6. Provide medical treatment when sick until fully recovered. After writing down these 6 items, she simply added that if even one of these demands was not met, they would strike and refuse to accept customers. And at the end, she wrote the names of the 8 people jointly and stamped their thumbprints under each name. After finishing, Buyong read it aloud once. She stammered out the words one by one. After reading it, they rejoiced endlessly, clapping and shouting, feeling as if the deed was already done and the owner would come crawling and bowing to them. It was also a joyous thing to realize for the first time how incredibly great the power of cooperation was, something they had never imagined before. After jumping and clinging to each other in boundless joy, they drew lots, and the person who drew the blank was to take the demand letter to the owner and submit it. Ah, these wenches. I've seen it all, these disgusting wenches. These worthless wenches. These presumptuous wenches. The owner couple jumped up and down, taking turns shouting as they rushed into the room. You ridiculous wenches, what is all this? The demand letter trembled violently at the tips of his enraged fingers. You should just do your jobs and earn the money we agreed upon in the first place. What is all this nonsense on top of your ugly behavior? Gawking at them one by one, he tore the demand letter to shreds with trembling hands. Worthless wenches, are you saying I should wait on each and every one of you hand and foot? You earn a pittance of money. What right do you have to talk so big? Though anger boiled up, everyone remained silent under the owner's vicious domineering, until Buyong, who had been holding back, finally opened her mouth. So have you treated us like human beings? You wench, are you saying I should treat you like ladies from a rich family? Whether it's a lady from a rich family or a beggar, have you treated us even as much as dogs or pigs? If you wenches wanted to live in luxury so badly, why did you let yourselves be sold here in the first place? Did we come because we wanted to be sold here? That's what I'm saying. You wenches who get sold to a place like this, how dare you talk so arrogantly? People who are sold to a place like this are going to die anyway. Don't look down on us so much. With those faces, what do you mean look down on you, you ridiculous things? What do you mean ridiculous? Ah, you ill-mannered wench. Jumping up, he slapped Buyong sharply across the cheek. In an instant, the faces of the enraged women flushed bright red with veins popping. You bastard, why are you hitting her? By what authority are you just hitting people like that? Did you think we'd only live tied down to you? You kicking bastard. You murderous bastard. Without any prior agreement, they stood up in unison, as if they had promised, and screamed at the top of their lungs. Ha! These ridiculous things. More than finding them ridiculous, the owner was taken aback by their unexpected loud screaming, lowered his voice, and stepped back slightly. Who is it that has fed and kept you alive all this time? You ungrateful wenches, is it right for you to act like this? Gratitude? Don't be ridiculous. Who has received whose gratitude? You think you're something because your stomachs are full? Do you think the world is yours just because grains of rice are standing upright in your guts? No more talking. If you want to grant our demands, do so. And if you don't want to, then don't. Do as you please. Humph. Let's see whose body wears out first. Whether you starve to death or not, let's see if I give you wenches even a spoonful of rice. Threatening them like this, the owner left the room. Goodness, what on earth am I seeing? The owner's wife, who had been standing silently in a corner, muttered and followed him out. Thus, it had been 3 days since they went to war with the owner. Food supplies had been completely cut off. Not having put a single grain in their stomachs for 3 days, their energy was exhausted. Today, too, Myongja merely lay face down in the corner of her room upstairs and cried. Since they hadn't taken any customers for a few days, her body felt light, but in exchange, the hunger was unbearable. We did this for nothing. What if the time for me to leave is delayed even further because of this? Clutching her hungry stomach, lying down and getting up repeatedly, she worried. When she grew sad from this thought and that, she took out the photograph she kept in her bosom and looked at it over and over again. Looking at the photo, she inevitably ended up crying a spell. But when her tears dried, she took the photo out to look at it once more. During the 3 years since she entered this hell, that photo was her only companion and comfort. It was not a picture of a lover, but one taken with her family members when she was young. At that time, her family had lived well enough not to envy others. Her father and mother stood in the back, and she stood in the front row holding hands with her younger siblings. It was taken on Chuseok when a photographer came to town, with her hair combed and wearing new clothes. It was already 7 years ago. For some reason after that, their family fortunes began to decline. There was a fire at the house, their land was washed away, and in just 4 years, the household completely collapsed. Thus, 3 years ago, through a bizarre and twisted chain of connections, Myungja ended up crossing over to this place. When she was dragged away from her hometown, the only thing she carried with her was this single photograph. Whenever she missed her mother and father, whenever she thought of her younger siblings, she took out the photo and cried her heart out. There was no way her father and mother were still in their hometown without a house or property. They might be wandering around unfamiliar villages with a bowl on their heads and a gourd dipper at their waists. But she would only know all that if she went to her hometown. Only by going back to her hometown quickly could she find out where they had gone. Thinking like this, she wrestled with the photo with her eyes several times a day, just eagerly waiting for the 3 years to pass and the contracted term to end. However, even though 3 years had passed and the term had expired, the owner showed no intention of letting her go. Feeling resentful and bitter about all this, she spent all day today just looking at the photo and crying. While looking at the photo, thinking and crying, today too passed, and before she knew it, it was night. Myungja wiped her tears, got up, and opened the curtains. Outside the window, the vast city spread out endlessly, and the dark streets swallowed up layers of lives, deep as the ocean. Within it, tens of thousands of lamps poured out like early evening stars, blinking as if calling out to people. Myungja opened the window, letting the cold night air hit her, and listlessly looked down at the streets. Somehow, it seemed free out there. She thought about escaping this place quickly and swimming to her heart's content in that space. After gazing at the alluring streets for a long while, she closed the window and drew the curtains again. Hunger and thirst suddenly overwhelmed her afresh. She immediately took the straight stairs down and went to the room downstairs. In the spacious room, her companions, whose eyes had sunken deeply from 3 days of fasting, were lying down weakly or sitting silently. "I'm so hungry I could die." Myungja couldn't endure it any longer and surrendered. The silent ones chimed in and cried out too. "My stomach burns. I'm hungry. What a terrible thing to do. I'll sell my fucking if I have to, but I can't live starving like this." Buyong, who had been lying down, got up, calmed them, and whipped up their exhausted spirits. "Surely we won't die from starving for 3 days. They say the vicious people of the old days were fine even after starving for a month. The old days are the old days, and now is now. Shouldn't people nowadays be even more vicious? We have to see who is more desperate, them or us. Let's endure it a bit more." When Buyong spoke like this, there was one faction that said, "Live or die, let's see this through. Let's endure it longer." And another faction that still said, "I can't live like this. I can't endure it." "Are you that hungry?" Buyong could no longer coax them. "My eyes feel like they're rolling back, and my body feels like it's twisting. I can't live." "Then let's gather whatever we have and at least get a bite to eat." Buyong rummaged through her skirt and threw a couple of nickel coins on the floor. "Here, you all put out whatever you have. Let's see." From their skirts, nickel coins fell onto the floor, 1 or 2 at a time. It was money they had managed to get as extra tips only when they took in customers. Gathering the 10 or so nickel coins that quickly accumulated, Buyong gave them to Chaebong. "Here, go and buy whatever there is to eat." Chaebong took the money, went to the store across the street, and came back with both arms full of bread. These wenches are formidable. The owner couldn't help but be surprised. thinking they would surrender in less than a day. Yet they had dragged it out for 3 days. He was furious at the wench's behavior, but he also thought it was a great mistake on his part to have held out without realizing it, rather than soothing them well in the beginning. In these times when every single night was precious, closing the doors for 3 nights meant massive losses for him, especially since this pavilion was exceptionally more prosperous than others. The loss was even greater. The owner, whose head was never free from numerical calculations at any time, couldn't stand wasting even a single hour. Moreover, as the night began and he heard the songs of men becoming louder outside, he could endure it no longer and rushed to their room again. "Aren't you ills hungry?" He tried hard to soften his voice. "What does it matter to you whether we're hungry or not?" Bong-sun, having gained courage, boldly snapped back. "If you just needlessly scream and shout, aren't you the only ones who suffer? When I tell you this, listen obediently. Don't regret it later. Whether we regret it or not, you worry entirely too much about others." Having now patted their stomachs with bread, they did not give in easily. "Please, change your minds now." "Then does that mean you'll grant our demands?" "Stop talking nonsense and just eat your food and do your jobs." "What do you mean nonsense? I'm asking if you will grant our demands or not." "Come on, get up. Hasn't it already been 3 nights? Even if it's not 3 days but 3 months, we intend to achieve our demands." "Look, what good has this done for you, wenches? Where in the world is there a rule that you rebel like this against the owner who feeds and keeps you alive? Cut the nagging. If you're going to grant our demands, do it. And if you don't want to, then don't. What's with all this other talk?" Boo-young articulated every single word sharply and pushed back. "Are you wenches not going to listen?" The owner, who had softened, suddenly flew into a rage. In his anger, his triangular eyes glared yellow. "You wenches think you're something because I coaxed you. Well, if you don't coax us, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Even so, this wench?" "What do you mean, this wench?" "Ah, you wench." The owner jumped up and slapped Boo-young's cheek. He immediately struck the back of her head as she collapsed forward, wrapped his hand around her loosened hair, and threatened them loudly. "Come at me, all of you wenches." But he was not the only one enraged. Seeing their companion get beaten and suffer such humiliating abuse, they all simultaneously erupted in anger. Bright red veins popped out all over their bodies. However, their anger was so overwhelming that for a long while they just trembled violently, their mouths sealed shut, unable to speak. "Come at me, all you wenches." The bastard viciously gripped her hair and barked like a tiger. "You bastard, are you hitting a person again? If you don't want to listen, we can both just stop. Why are you hitting people? You wicked bastard. You dog-like bastard." Though lacking in stamina and strength, they gathered their rage and anger together and lunged at the bastard in unison. They grabbed his clothes, slapped his face, pulled his hair, clung to his legs, and bit his flesh. They swarmed over his body like bees, using all their spite and strength. Although they were grown women, they lacked physical strength, and the bastard, being naturally strong-boned and fierce, violently shook them off with one hand, kicked them away, and continued dragging Boo-young by her hair into every corner of the spacious room. Blood flowed from the mouth of Boo-young, who was being trampled and dragged beneath him. As she was dragged here and there, a trail of blood zigzagged across the broad floor. Soon, the sound of weeping, unable to contain the anger, burst out from one side. "Hit him, you wicked bastard! Are you even of human seed? You bastard who deserves to be struck by lightning! You bastard who wouldn't be spared even if you fell over with your tongue sticking out! He's killing a person! Call the police!" They exhausted all their voices in spite. Eventually, the owner's wife came rushing in, terrified. Clothes were torn, bruises formed, and blood flowed. Disregarding all of that, they used all their might, clenching their teeth, to battle the bastard and the world. "Open the door. Let's sleep and go." As the night deepened, the shouts of drunken guests outside the door rose incessantly. "Are you all dead? Myongja, Boo-young, Chaebong." The sound of knocking on the door was heard periodically. Still, if there was no answer from inside, they would violently shake it for a while as if to break it, then spit out some curses and walk away to another place. After one group left like this, another group would appear. Open the door. What's going on? It's been 3 days. Bongson. Chaebong. Bongson. Inside the room, everyone lay drained of energy. Rather than just being tired after an intense fight, the frail female soldiers, almost unconscious, lay scattered here and there as if dead, covering their noses against the smell of blood, fishiness, and the mess. They couldn't even pant in anger. Their energy was too exhausted for that. Wordless and as if dead, they simply lay there. However, not a single one of them thought they had lost yet. They were merely tired for the moment. When they regained their energy, they thought they would have to fight the bastard again. Bongsun. It's me, Bongsun. You wench, are you ignoring me? Bongsun. Bongsun. Because the calling from outside was so noisy, Bongsun got up, left the room, and opened the door. Bongsun, you wench, don't you recognize me? The man who rushed at her was a regular who exclusively patronized and bought her. However, today of all days, Bongsun did not greet him with a welcoming face. No, not today. Saying this, she pushed away the man holding her and tried to close the door. What do you mean not today? It's been 3 days. The man held on to her and wouldn't let go. We fought with the owner and decided not to work. You fought with the owner? The men looked closely anew at her torn clothes, disheveled hair, and traces of blood. Now come another day, and all of you please leave today. No, why did you fight? The owner is a wicked bastard. We decided to see if we'd work before he listens to us. You fought because the owner is a wicked bastard? Bongshan hesitated, stepped down into the courtyard, and raised her voice. He starved us, and on top of that, my companions are lying there like dead after being beaten to death and vomiting blood. As she pointed toward the room, tears welled up in her eyes. At Bongson's loud voice, the men and women who had been making noise, haggling, and singing in front of the neighboring houses gathered here one by one, clustering together. Bongson could not endure the sorrow. She wanted to pour out her unplaceable sorrow to her heart's content in front of all these people now. She stepped up into the courtyard, raised both hands, and shouted, "Listen! If you have blood in your veins, listen! Are we not human beings? Do you think we've been treated like human beings? We've been treated lower than dogs or pigs. When you people bought our bodies, did you ever pity us even once? We are worse than dogs, worse than pigs. Have we eaten what we wanted to eat, played when we wanted to play, gotten a spoonful of gruel or a sip of medicine when we were sick? When we first come in, the world is dark with beatings and tears, and even when the contracted term passes, does the owner let us go? He holds on tightly and won't let go, trying to squeeze out one more drop and extort one more penny. We are not human beings. We are not human beings. We are objects. When we first crossed over here, who was the bastard who sold us off under a contract or whatever, and who is the bastard sucking every penny of the money we earn now? We are objects whose blood is squeezed and flesh dried up for those bastards, who made us abandon our parents, lose our siblings, leave our hometowns, and receive treatment worse than dogs or pigs. Who is it? Overcome with excitement, she shouted mindlessly like this without even realizing it. The words she had heard from Buyong a few days ago now poured out of her mouth one after another, though the order was mixed up, as if they were words springing from her own soul. It was lengthy, but she couldn't bear it without saying it all. She continued in an excited tone. We are fully equipped with the same features, so in what way are we inferior to others that we ended up doing this? Doing this filthy thing? Why did we end up like this, unable to live decently like others? Is it because our fate is wretched? What kind of fucking fate is that? She, who had argued for fate against Buyong 3 days ago, now definitively denied fate. She was already not the person she was 3 days ago. Now, 3 days later, she knew how to look at the world straight on. Isn't it this leper-like world, the tricks of these bastards, that made us this wretched? When Bongson clenched her fists and shouted loudly like this, various sounds came from the crowd of people, and among them were people clapping in awe. That's right! That wench is brilliant. She's smart. Being in the same situation, Bongshan's words soaked into the very bones of the prostitutes from the neighboring houses who had gathered among them. Overwhelmed with emotion, they let out long sighs, secretly wiped away tears, and lamented in low voices respectively. We really aren't human beings. Haven't we received treatment worse than dogs? What a wicked world. Having poured out her unplaceable sorrow to her heart's content in front of so many people, Bong Shon's inside felt thoroughly refreshed. At the same time, reflecting on how she, who was ignorant and naive, who had never chattered in front of many people and had never even heard a single word of a speech made by someone else, had suddenly grown so mature and articulate, she couldn't help but secretly admire herself. She clenched her teeth and continued with profound eloquence. We can no longer endure this contempt. We can no longer be fooled like idiots. We all teamed up and fought the owner. The bastard didn't listen to a single word we said, starved us for 3 days, and on top of that, hit and kicked us, that murderous bastard. Right now in that room, my companions who were beaten to death are lying there vomiting blood. In that room, in that room. The people's eyes followed the hand she pointed with. The anger that had momentarily faded while she was speaking mindlessly now flared up anew in her chest. She shouted with all her might, "The owner is a murderous bastard. Let's see if we ever work again. Let's see if we ever do this again. We are already not bodies tied to you. You stingy bastard. Let's see if we ever earn money for you again." As if the owner were right in front of her eyes, she glared and poured out curses. Her whole body trembled violently as her pent-up rage burst. Let's see if we ever work again. Let's see if we stay in this bastard's house, in this filthy bastard's house again. Now, as if cursing the house itself, she forcefully slammed her bursting anger and trembling body against the door. The door frame broke and the glass shattered. Like a madwoman, she hastily got back up, found a rock on the ground, picked it up, and took aim at the red lantern hanging above the door that read Bonghakru. The next moment, with a clatter, the shattered red lantern fell to the ground and was violently smashed into pieces like millet. Whitish shards of glass flew sharply into the surroundings, and the front of the house instantly turned into pitch darkness. Holding their breath for a moment, the people who had been watching her actions began to stir in the darkness. "Bong Sun, you've gone mad. Drag the owner out. Well broken. Would we ever do this bastard's work again? It's a strike. Well done. I heard they did it down at Chuolru too." Centered around the shattered red lantern in the dark storefront, the streets of this night, this market, seethed and agitated profoundly. The red lantern shattering on the ground wasn't just broken glass. It was the sound of the absurd chains binding them being broken. Bong Shon's desperate cry still resonates deeply with us today. What are your thoughts on their struggle? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.